This is Jarrod Horak, and this is my Belmont Stakes recap video. And here we go again in the 2024 Triple Crown Series. Just like the first two races, the third race produced a big upset, and the upset winner was Dornoch. Trainer Danny Gargan, Luis Saez was the rider, and he was able to press the pace from second and win by a half length. He paid $37.40 to win, and he won by a half length over Mindframe. Very lightly raced Todd Pletcher runner, just making his third lifetime start. He stalked from the outside post under Jarrod Ortiz Jr., and he was wandering in the stretch, and he couldn't get by. And then Sierra Leone, my top choice. He ended up rallying from the back of the pack. He was a clear third, 4 lengths in front of fourth place finisher Honor Marie, who was rallying off the pace. The remaining order of finish, in fifth, it was Antiquarian for Todd Pletcher. Todd Pletcher's maiden Protective ended up finishing sixth. The Preakness winner, Seize the Gray, was seventh. Mystik Dan, your Kentucky Derby winner, was eighth. The Wine Steward was ninth, and then Resilience rounded out the 10-horse field. The fractions, 22.99, 47.25 for the half, 6 furlongs and 110.67. They went a mile and 135.51 the final time, 201.64 seconds. And just as we expected, Seize the Gray set the pace from the inside post. And Dornoch figured to be up on the pace if he was going to run a quality race, because that's what he did when he was a 2-year-old. When Dornoch was a 2-year-old, he was up on the pace and he was really running well. He actually defeated Sierra Leone by a nose in the Grade 2 Remsen Stakes. It was a sloppy, wet track last year, and Dornoch was able to turn away Sierra Leone and win that one by a nose. And then his first start this year was the Fountain of Youth Stakes, and in that race, he was able to control the pace. It was scratched down to 5 horses, and he won that one. And then he was a disappointing 4th in the Bluegrass. Sierra Leone won that one. And then he was 10th in a 20-horse field in the Kentucky Derby. He didn't have a good start. He didn't have a great trip there either. So Dornoch, the key to his success is getting up on the pace. And Seize the Gray set that pace, and Dornoch was pressing a half length back in second. And he was able to forge to the lead after a mile. So he had that short lead, quarter of a mile to go. Mindframe was in a good spot, stalking in third. And Mindframe came after him and actually poked his head in front in the stretch, and those two were clear, and it looked like it might be a battle in the stretch, but then Mindframe started wandering in the stretch. His inexperience really showed, and Dornoch was able to gut out that victory by a half length. Now, my top choice, Sierra Leone, he figured to be rallying from off the pace, but he didn't have a great start. He actually stumbled at the start, and then he was bounced around at the start as well. So he was further back than they would have liked him to be. And then coming around the far turn, he started to finally get his momentum going, and Protective bumped with him and threw him off stride a little bit there. But then he was able to get back. He was coming in a little bit in the stretch, but nothing like the Kentucky Derby. He ran a decent race here, and he was able to just keep coming and grinding and finding his best stride late. Just couldn't quite get there. He was a length and a half behind the top 2 finishers, and then 4 lengths in front of Honor Marie. So Sierra Leone ran a quality race again, just like he did in the Kentucky Derby. In the Kentucky Derby, we saw the big upset of Mystik Dan. And the key to the Kentucky Derby this year was that ground-saving, beautiful trip that Mystik Dan was able to work out. And he scooted up the inside and opened up a clear lead. And that was the key to success. He was able to just hold on 3 horses across the line, noses apart. And it was Mystik Dan in the Kentucky Derby just winning over Sierra Leone, who was lugging in the stretch. That cost him the race. And Forever Young from Japan was another nose back in third. And then the Preakness Stakes. And in the Preakness Stakes, for that race, it was a wet, speed-favoring track. And I was going to pick Muth, who was going to be the favorite for Bob Baffert. He really looked like he was a standout on paper. But Muth got sick the week of the race. He had to scratch out of the Preakness. And then after that wet, speed-favoring track happened, Seize the Gray was able to get out there and control that pace and ride the speed bias all the way around. So then the Belmont Stakes comes up, and it's looking like there's going to be an honest pace. But if you watch the races at Saratoga, June 6th, 7th, and 8th, you definitely saw that horses with early pressing speed won the majority of the races on the main track all three days of the first 3 days of that Belmont Stakes Festival at Saratoga. So we had that speed-favoring track, definitely favoring those forwardly placed runners, but it wasn't like you couldn't close it all. We saw Croupi for trainer Todd Pletcher win the Suburban Stakes, going from off the pace and winning that one. And so that was a nice effort from off the pace at a mile and a quarter as well. Also, it's not like closers were without a chance. but definitely if you were forwardly placed, you had an edge in these races at Saratoga. So Dornoch was able to take advantage of that, win this race by a half length over Mindframe. If he was a little more experienced, maybe if they had another race in him, maybe he could have won this. Sierra Leone, with a little bit of a better trip, he could have won it as well. But that's the thing about these horses now. 3 upsets in the 3 Triple Crown races. We're just seeing different winners show up in all of these races in this 3-year-old division. So we have a wide open 3-year-old division heading into the second half of the year. There's absolutely no leader in this division. If I had to say one of the horses that I think is right up there, obviously Sierra Leone, I think is right there as one of the top horses in the division. But these 3-year-old males just keep beating each other. So we're going to see some big races this summer, like the Haskell. Maybe Muth will end up there. The Travers, you're going to see a big field. Everyone's going to be shooting for these races now because there's no leader in the division, and they're going to try to win these races because they think they're going to be able to. But Muth is one of the horses that to watch in the second half of the year. He's supposedly targeting the Haskell Stakes. So we have Fierceness, who was so impressive in the Florida Derby, and then he flopped in the Kentucky Derby. And that's kind of been the thing about these horses. They're just all over the place. So we saw Seize the Gray win the Preakness, and then he's nowhere in the Belmont. We saw Mystik Dan win the Kentucky Derby. He's 8th in the Belmont Stakes. So it's just no leader. We don't really know what's going to happen the second half of the year. Sierra Leone's the one consistent. He just keeps running his race from off the pace. But as a closer, you're always at the mercy of the pace, track bias. You need to work out a trip. But he just tries hard, and he keeps coming every single time. So Sierra Leone's one. I think every time he runs, you got to consider him in your trifectas just because he's so consistent. So now we're looking possibly at a horse like Torpedo Anna, who they thought about running for trainer Kenny McPeak. He thought about running her in the Belmont Stakes after she was so impressive in the Kentucky Oaks, but he decided he was going to run Mystik Dan here, and then he disappointed. He ran her in the Acorn on June 7th, and she dominated that race. So now the way that this 3-year-old division is, you have to think that maybe they're going to consider Torpedo Anna for some of these top male races in this division later this year. We'll have to see what direction they go with her, but they have to be considering it at this point after watching these races unfold and seeing all these upsets happen in the Triple Crown Series. And unfortunately for me, I was disappointed this year that I wasn't able to have winners in the Triple Crown Series. This is just so tough. This year was especially tough with the 3 big upsets, the wet speed favoring track in the Preakness, and Sierra Leone, my top choice, losing by a nose in the Derby, and then running a quality race, but not quite getting there in the Belmont. Close but no cigar, but it doesn't do any good for the paying clients. So hopefully I'll be able to bounce back in future Triple Crown Series races, which I'm sure I will because I have a long-term history of success in the Triple Crown Series races, but this year especially tough, and I'm sure a lot of handicappers are the same boat. Just very difficult to come up with the winners of these races. Can't win them all, but I'm going to keep coming right out here, being transparent. I didn't hit it, and I have nothing to hide. I'm just going to come right out and say it, that I didn't have the winners of the Triple Crown Series races this year. Heading into the Belmont, I had 8 of the last 10 Belmonts. Prior to the Preakness, I hit it in 6 of 9 years, and then hit the Derby like 3 times, I think, in the last 9 years. That's a tougher race. But overall, a lot of long-term success, just not in 2024. So hopefully I'm going to continue to follow this 3-year-old division, and hopefully we can get some winners later in the year. Now, another horse to look for, possibly coming from overseas, is City of Troy for trainer Aidan O'Brien. This is a son of Justify, and he's 4 for 5 lifetime, and he's a 2-time Group 1 winner, and he was especially impressive in his last Group 1 win. So he's one that he's bred for dirt. He's got a lot of ability, and in a 3-year-old division like this year, a horse like City of Troy coming over from overseas, possibly to run in the Travers Stakes, he could be an interesting contender. That's why I think horses like City of Troy, if he comes, Torpedo Anna, if she takes on the boys, certainly those horses would have to be considered major contenders in big races later this year. So we have the Haskell coming up in July, and then the Travers coming up in August, and then the Grade 1 Pennsylvania Derby in September, and then they're going to have to, after that, 3-year-olds are going to have to take on some older rivals. We're just waiting for somebody to step forward and be a leader in this division, because someone's got to be the 3-year-old champion, and right now it's wide open. We'll have to see how all that ends up playing out the second half of the year. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment if you like this horse racing content. And keep checking my YouTube channel. I'm going to cover as many of these 3-year-old races as I can. In the second half of the year, we're going to keep following these Triple Crown Series horses, see how they do in some other big races coming up. And for me, I'm going to have a full card break after Santa Anita ends next week. I have 4 full cards at Santa Anita for their closing week next week. And then my full cards will resume with the Del Mar Summer Meet starting in July. And that'll wrap up my coverage of the 2024 Triple Crown Series. Hopefully, some people were able to get the winners of these races and cash some tickets. I had some good luck in my full cards for the Triple Crown Series for Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Oaks Day, Black Eyed Susan and Preakness Day. And then for Saratoga, I had some nice winners on Thursday this week, June 6th, June 7th, and then June 8th, even for Belmont Stakes undercard. Had some good winners, some best bet winners, some my price plays. I had some winners there, some pick 4s and pick 5s. So overall, very successful, just not having that success in the Triple Crowns races themselves. So that'll do it. And until I see you next time, good luck.